Hey there, Guy here from the Chit Chat podcast. I am so excited for you to listen to this next podcast. I just got done recording it with Mayor Dave Kleis from St. Cloud. Man, Mayor Kleis absolutely loves this community, and he is an absolute history buff. So we talked about all kinds of history things from our community here and just about our world and his love of travel. And so I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. Thanks for listening. Yeah, welcome to the Chit Chat podcast. We're super, super thankful that you've joined us today. Mr. Mayor, would you just maybe introduce yourself? Just give us a little flyover of your career at working for St. Cloud.
Sure. Well, Dave Kleis, Mayor of St. Cloud, have been for it's my 19th year,
right.
and I grew up in a small town not too far from here, Litchfield, Minnesota. So, a town of about 6,000 people. Yeah, I grew up there for 18 years of my life, and 7 days after high school graduation, I was in the United States Air Force. I was in Lackland, Texas, basic training, on to Keesler, Mississippi for tech training, and then boom, I was in Okinawa, Japan for a year and a half. And served there, and then applied for special duty in Washington, D.C. I applied at the White House and the Pentagon, got the Pentagon. So I ended up serving the Air Force and the Pentagon as I must have been 19, at that time. So I wasn't making any Pentagon major defense decisions.
Yeah.
I was flipping slides, back in the days before we had PowerPoint. I flipped slides for Caspar Weinberger, met Ronald Reagan at that time, the president. There about a year and a half, and then decided I got out of active duty and went into the reserves. And I was in Minnesota for that, so I went to St. Cloud State University. Graduated from St. Cloud State University 4 years later with a double major of history and political science. I was pre-law at the time and was planning on going to law school, and then just had a different little career. I ended up going into business. I started a business, Central Minnesota Driving Academy, and that was 33 years ago. I started that, still in operation. I have my manager run it, and then I had a mentor of mine, Joanne Benson, who said, you should, she convinced me. So I ran for, actually prior to that, I just stepped back. I ran for mayor in 1989 when I was a college student, a senior, and lost miserably. I came in 8th out of 7 candidates because there were 8 of us that signed up. One person was discovered that they lied on their campaign brochures 2 weeks before the election. That person pulled off out of the election, but was still on the ballot and beat me anyway. So I had 96 votes. I had 120 people at my campaign party and 750 lawn signs, but I only had 96 votes. So I came in last. 4 years later, a friend of mine, Joanne Benson, convinced me to run for the state senate because she was the state senator and she became lieutenant governor with Arnie Carlson in his second term. So I did and was elected. I was 30 years old when I was elected to the state senate, one of the youngest at that time. Wow. And served in the Minnesota Senate for 11 years. I was talked into running for mayor again, something I had already had an attempt at least many years prior. And so I ran in 2005 and won that election. So I left the Senate a year early because of that, and then have been elected. This is my 5th term. So I've been mayor and still own my business. I have a manager, and she keeps it running. But I'm full-time mayor. It's one of the few cities that has a strong mayor system. Out of all the cities, only 4 do: St. Cloud, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Duluth. And so I have been mayor for, again, this is my 19th year.
We were actually chatting about that today, the strong mayor system, and in my memory, Rochester was also a strong mayor system, but
Rochester's not, and that's surprising for a lot of people because it's a large city.
Yeah.
It's larger than the city of St. Cloud, but our MSA is larger than the Rochester MSA because if you take all the small cities around, you look at our daytime population, they're all in one county, and it's just Rochester there for the most part. But Rochester's a weak mayor system, so the mayor sits on the council like everywhere else, and there are only those cities, and Minneapolis just became a strong mayor system. So you talk about a big city that wasn't even a strong mayor system up until 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So they voters approved that. St. Cloud's been a strong mayor system since 1952. Duluth, St. Cloud, and St. Paul were only the cities that were strong mayor. Now Minneapolis is part of that very small group of cities. So it's unique. I don't serve on the council. I have executive responsibility. The council has legislative responsibility. So I don't sit on the council. I don't vote on the council. I do have veto authority, but the council doesn't hire or fire anybody, and they don't have executive role. So it's truly what a governorship would be, or a president, or what most people think their mayor is.
Right.
But in the reality, it's only 4 cities in Minnesota.
Fascinating. Okay, Mr. Mayor, as we jump in here, or before we jump in, today we're drinking, this is called a London Fog. So when we were getting this
London Fog is really tasty, and I just discovered milk teas, recently because I was at a place and I like tea, and
this is what we know.
I used to love coffee. My doctor tells me the coffee, from a
slow it down a little bit.
Yeah. It's not so much the caffeine. It's just, I think there's some, whatever it is in my stomach. Some people just don't do it well. I used to be a 2-pot a day coffee drinker for many years, and then I just gave it up once, and I switched to hot chocolate.
Ooh.
And I have had the hot chocolate here, which is great. And so I'll do hot chocolate. Midday is normally where I do that.
Yeah.
But it's not like coffee. It's not like you can have 5 cups of hot chocolate and expect to stay thin or healthy.
No.
So, I
slow.
like the tea. You still get a little calorie with the milk. But yeah, this is great. This London Fog is.
It's basically a latte.
Okay.
But with instead of a shot of espresso, it's a tea bag.
Yeah. It's great. I can still drink caffeine. That's not the issue. It's just the coffee itself. But But yeah, I think it's great. So I'm a huge fan of. I like hot drinks, so that's the thing for me.
Even in the summer, will you drink a hot drink?
Even in the summer, I will drink a hot drink. Yeah, there's something about In fact, when I did my cold turkey on coffee, I drank hot water in my for a while, just without tea.
Yeah.
But I discovered tea, so I'm a huge tea fan too.
Well, we've got another course of tea coming in a little.
All right, I'll have to try that. If you, I love teas. So
sweet.
And London Fog's cool. I mean, I hear there's a big controvery in London because of the issues that are happening in the Middle East, that the tea has to take has to go all the way around Africa. So, and Brits are really particular about their teas, and not only that, I mean, so it's a big crisis
I'm
there
sure.
because it takes longer to get there. So,
And it's probably the cost has gone up on that.
Oh, I'm sure it's gone up quite a bit. I mean, I'm a history buff. So World War I, they actually shot out mortar or rounds of ammunition enough to heat up the guns to boil the water for the tea. So they weren't even shooting at the enemy; they were just heating up the water for the tea.
Wow.
In the World War I. But anyways, I digress all the time. When it comes to history, you're going to hear me talk about history all the time.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the reasons that I kind of want to talk to you for the podcast. I had the opportunity to hear you speak. I'm in the chamber leadership group, and you came and spoke at one of our days. And I was fascinated as you talked about St. Cloud's history. And there were a few things kind of going through my mind as you were talking. One, I was like, the history itself is really it's just fantastic and so fun to learn about. And then at one point, it was so polished. I thought, oh, this is like a script. Like you've studied this 60-minute thing, and you are like presenting this thing because it was so well polished. All of your the dates and the times and all that stuff. And then we hit the question and answer section, and someone would ask you a question, and they would ask you about some intersection or some building or business, and you jumped in with the exact same kind of polish about all of their questions. And I was like, oh, this isn't like a thing, this isn't a talk of yours that you do about St. Cloud's history. This is something that's just like deep inside of you. And it was just extra fun and extra impressive that you just have committed so much of that to memory. And so it's just really, really fun. And so I was just curious, could we just talk a little bit about St. Cloud's history?
No, absolutely. And I appreciate that. And I love history. That's although, and I kid those college professors I had before. I had this history major. What am I going to do with it? So I figured I give tours and talk history. So I was pre-law. The reason I did history because my law, the professor that was my pre-law advisor said, take whatever major you want, but take one that you really enjoy. And I enjoy history, so became my major. So
history feels like such a good first step for lawyers anyway.
And I think it's for everyone. I think
agreed.
And history tends to be in too. I mean, it's in people enjoy history. It doesn't matter age, generation, whatever it may be. It's really cool. So I love history.
Well, sweet. I think. And again, I've heard 60 minutes of what is, I'm sure, a 10-hour talk on St. Cloud, which we don't have that today. But I just think a lot of people maybe don't really know some of our history. And would you just give us a couple minutes, like how did St. Cloud come about?
Sure. It started this area, obviously, through the true history, we go back to the Dakota. The Dakotas were here for 10,000 years. So, in this area, this region. And then the Anishinaabe probably go back about 400 years, 400 or 500 years. So those were basically the two main tribes that were in this area for a number of years. And then, of course, then you had explorers. I mean, if you think of the U.S. history, and there was a lot of people say there was nothing west of the Mississippi River. That was kind of the dividing line of the U.S. at that point. So, but you had explorers this beautiful, massive river. So you had people that always tried to find the source of the Mississippi. Zebulon Pike came through this area in search of the source of the Mississippi. He never did reach that, but he came through this area, and he is documented in his writings. He named these islands out by St. Cloud State the Beaver Islands. That's Zebulon Pike. There's a monument out there. But you started getting settlers that came. That was 1805, and then all of a sudden you had fur traders coming down from Canada, and they're using the Mississippi as that route. And so in the 1850s, you started getting settlers in this area, and you had a number of folks, and there were three in particular. In 1856 is when prior to 1856, from 1850 to 1856, there were these three settlers. They're considered like the fathers of St. Cloud. John Wilson was one. John Wilson is really, there's a monument for him down by Lake George. He's the one who kind of developed what was called Middletown.
Yeah.
There was Middletown that was kind of the St. Cloud State. If you look at where St. Cloud State is and where Cathedral, that area, there were two ravines. There were actual physical ravines that separated these three hamlets. That's Middletown, kind of what's downtown St. Cloud today.
Yep.
St. Cloud State was what was Lower Town. It's the south, so the lower part.
Yep.
And that was George Brott was the end. He was an East Coast developer. He did that. So that area was kind of more your Protestant East Coast.
Yeah.
Temperist, abolitionists that lived there.
Yeah.
John Wilson's area, he just gave a lot of that land to Germans. Those were German, Catholic, very German area, very German-speaking area. Merchants, beer, tobacco, all those things were there. And then you had the northern part, which is a guy by the name of Sylvanus B. Lowry. He was a slave owner, Southerner. So basically there were Southerners in that area, and that's basically from Cathedral to where the hospital is today.
Okay.
So if you look at, there was a ravine at that point. So you got these Eastern Protestant temperist abolitionists in one area. You got these German beer-drinking Catholics in the middle, and then you've got these Southern slave owners.
Yeah.
The abolitionist slave owners are separated by the Germans in the middle in the piece. So you really had three very diverse groups of individuals, philosophically, religious, and at 1856, they came together and formed one hamlet called St. Cloud. So that became St. Cloud 1856. John Wilson, again, was really kind of the push of that. The first mayor was Sylvanus B. Lowry, the person who had that Southern, slave owner. And so 1856, it became the city of St. Cloud. And, a lot of changes from there, a lot of controversy during that period of time. You had in the Lower Town, you had a woman by the name of Jane Swisshelm, who was she was a publisher of a newspaper. She used to write these scathing editorials against Sylvanus B. Lowry, who was the first mayor, and the folks there, because she was an abolitionist. In fact, she was friends with Lincoln. I mean, she was one of the first Republicans in Minnesota. I mean, that was a brand new party at that point.
Right.
And so she owned the paper at that time, or was the publisher. But she did that. Sylvanus B. Lowry didn't like what she was publishing. He had some of his friends break into the office and bust up the printing presses and throw it in the Mississippi River. She continued to publish. I mean, she didn't stop her. Then of course they sued her, and then they stopped her. But she started a brand new newspaper under a different name.
Right.
And so Sylvanus B. Lowry started a newspaper called the Union, which eventually became the St. Cloud Times. So you look at that history. And then, John Wilson, who named St. Cloud, he named it after, he was of French descent.
Yeah.
He named it after St. Cloud, France. He was always a big fan of the writings of Napoleon. Napoleon would always write back to Josephine, who was in the Palace of St. Cloud in Paris, and would say, how are things in St. Cloud? He liked the name. He named it St. Cloud. St. Germain downtown is also of that French piece. Considering he gave most of his land and sold his land to German Catholics, he still had that French piece
French
of
tie.
it. So that's how St. Cloud began as a city. That's the shortest version I can give you, because every question would be an hour. I mean, I can do that, but that's really the start. Of course, then it went from there. And St. Cloud kind of grew and more, and one of the ravines was eventually filled in. Sylvanus B. Lowry ended up, the Civil War broke out after it became a city. Almost all the Southerners left and came back after the Civil War. And of course, there's lots of sub stories within those stories too that are there.
And the folks from down south, were they the opposite of snowbirding? Were they here because of like how harsh the summers are down there?
They were the opposite of, it's not like they could flip the air conditioning on in the south, so it was really hot in the south.
Yeah.
And so they came here for basically to get away, so it was cooler in the summer, and so they, they're like snowbirds now that go down to Arizona and then end up retiring and living there.
Yep.
They did the same thing coming up, although it wasn't a quick flight. It was a
long journey.
And most of those journeys were through rivers, so you started, in that area and you went up 2-3 rivers, because the Mississippi really didn't go right to where they were, and that's the whole issue. In fact, there's a story of the first African American in this community, which would have been Mary Butler, and she was a slave because of the Dred Scott decision. Even though Minnesota was free territory when they came here, because of the Dred Scott case, they were slaves in the South, so they were slaves here. And Mary Butler was forced to be here and forced that journey through 3 rivers, from the Cumberland to the Missouri to the Mississippi. And one of her kids, actually, one of her children died on the way. And then when she arrived here, she gave birth to John Butler, who was the first African American born in this area. She was the first African American here. They landed in which would have been the area where we now named Butler Park.
Great.
I named this park a number of years ago in honor of their sacrifice, and I did it because when I was rededicating the Lincoln statue, just not too far from there, I thought about, we got parks named after people who've given money or politicians, and we had some new parkland. I figured, let's name it after somebody who wouldn't be able to pay for their name and really was a part of that history.
That's cool.
And so that's Butler Park in that area. So they left during that period of time. Sylvanus B. Lowry, ended up, having some other. Probably he had some mental health issues and eventually died in I think it was a buggy accident or something around that time.
Really?
But he came back. John Wilson, the second mayor, who was kind of known as the founder. He lived, lived into his 90s. He's buried out in one of the cemeteries over here in St. Cloud. So he's the only one that has a monument down by Lake George that was placed there during the city's centennial to recognize the 100 years of the city being around.
So, Mr. Mayor, as you're so fond of, looking back and studying history, as you take what you know about St. Cloud's history and also where you're kind of helping guide St. Cloud, what are some of the things that you're the most excited about for the future of St. Cloud?
Well, downtown revitalization. I mean, downtown is downtown that it really has that history. So if you look at what are cool downtowns, I think cool downtowns are those that have, you got 19th century buildings. You can't just start a downtown with 19th century buildings unless it was started in the 19th century. I mean, you could replicate all you want, but these are 19th century buildings that really show the character in the history of downtown. It's a historic district. I think downtowns right now are really what we need to focus on. And when you look at just demographics and how things change around the country, COVID had a huge change. COVID really accelerated. It was already a change. People were looking at using technology and telecommuting and all that stuff. And of course, COVID just, took what probably would have taken naturally 10 years and made it 3 months, And so now downtowns have changed. And you look around the country, which downtowns survived are the ones that had housing components to it. It used to be just get a whole bunch of people to work downtown and you got a thriving downtown. But if you look at COVID, people weren't working in those areas, so the ones that continued to thrive were ones that had housing. Now, you don't have to go very far to see that. If you're familiar with the North Loop in Minneapolis, it's one of the coolest places in Minnesota.
It's incredible.
And it used to be, I remember when I was a kid, that was, nobody would go to the North Loop, and it's the warehouse district. What did you have? You had nothing. You had empty buildings, you had some strip joints, and that's it. Now you got a thriving... a lot of restaurants, coffee shops, people living in that area. It survived very well. You just look, not too far from the downtown Minneapolis. That's having a tough time because people aren't in those offices because people are working from home. So in order for us to really make our downtown, you got to create an atmosphere. You embrace the history, you embrace the Mississippi River, which is like if you're looking at a gold standard of any community, Mississippi River is a platinum status because everybody in the world knows what the Mississippi River is, and it's a beautiful river flowing through our community. So you take that, you create housing. So we have a goal of adding 1,000 housing. We want to connect, make it connectable and walkable. Walkable is the key. If you look at the largest workforce that we have in right now is in the largest group of people in the workforce are millennials by far. And then you've got, and millennials, all the surveys, in fact, I've just seen a recent survey that was done by a real estate group for nationally. Over 70% of millennials want to live in a urban, walkable area.
Right.
Now, if you look at urban walkable, if you look at central Minnesota, I can ask you, what would you guess, how much of central Minnesota is walkable urban? What percentage? Just throw out any number.
I mean, it's going to be really, really small. I guess I don't does it mean that it has a sidewalk? Does it mean that, what's the criteria?
Walkable is where you can walk to, in most cases, they look at 6 different points, one being like a coffee shop, a restaurant, a pharmacy, a barber shop, or a beauty salon. You take 5 different walkable areas where people would use on a regular basis. And if you can't walk there in 10 minutes, it's not walkable. If you have to get in your car, it's not walkable.
1%.
That's pretty good. Most people are over, but we're less than 1% of central Minnesota is walkable urban. If you've got 70% of the people that are in the current workforce want to live in walkable urban, and you only can provide less than 1% of the actual market to live, they're going to go somewhere else.
For sure.
So, and you need workers. Every employer in town needs workers. I mean, I'm an employer. I mean, we need workers on every level: public, private sector, nonprofit.
Yep.
So you've got to have a place where people want to live. And then you look at the other spectrum: baby boomers. Baby boomers is still a large group, and right now, you're seeing that with Social Security and all that. Yeah. I'm in the last year of the baby boomers. So I'm right at the end of that, but I'm still working. But baby boomers, the majority, over 60%, want to retire or live in walkable urban areas. So if you've got that market that's pushing walkable urban, you've got to focus your downtown with walkable urban. Now, the city's not going to create a bunch of housing. That's not the city's role. But the city can eliminate the barriers to what would be developing housing. Yeah. And the city can also create the connectivity. So downtown, for it to be truly walkable, figure out a better way to get over Highway 23, Division Street, from the campus area, which is a huge university. And you want to make sure that you attract people to the university. They can walk downtown, whether they're staff, whether they're support, or they want to just live in that neighborhood. Hospital, largest employer in St. Cloud is CentraCare. CentraCare has 5,000 employees that are just near downtown. Yep. If you want to create a better access, figure out a way to get over the railroad tracks and make it walkable. That's why part of our part is to create a trail that goes in there, an amphitheater down by Cathedrals Field. And then you've got a bridge, east and west. We want to connect the east and the west. What's the best way to do that? Make it inviting to want to cross the river. Yeah. The bridge just doesn't really invite you to the east or west side. No. And then you want to create an invitation to go to Lake George under that underpass. Figure out a way to make that inviting. So there, you've taken then the downtown itself, you've eliminated those barriers for connectivity, and you've made it inviting. So then, what is the core downtown? What
Expands.
we call what's called it's called downtown adjacent. Campus, the hospital, the cathedral area. Downtown adjacent now, it becomes the place you want to live, or downtown becomes the place you want to live. All of a sudden, the property values go up in those areas. You got a better vibe. You've got, again, 19th century buildings. You've got the arts, and you've got the core. You've got a convention center. You got a theater. You got another theater that just opened downtown. You've got the Pioneer Place, which is another theater, the Veranda. You got a children's museum that'll be completely renovated and open by the end of this year. Which is going to be beautiful. There's some other exciting things. I mean, you got a core of what's downtown. I had a summit about 14 months ago for downtown. It was December of year before, 14 months ago. Brought a bunch of folks together about this vision of trying to really, focus on downtown. We're asking the state legislature for $100 million to help with the infrastructure piece, not the housing. Rochester got over $500,000 from the state to do the same thing. Duluth got over
$500,000 or $500 million?
$500 million, yes, thank you. Because that's right, I'm using smaller numbers, but $500 million, and Duluth got over $110 million. Yep. We're asking for $100. We're the lowest, and we're the second largest MSA or Metropolitan Statistical Area outside of the Twin Cities. So we're larger than Rochester and Duluth.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is create the infrastructure around it to leverage $1 billion in private investment. That's the housing, that's the restaurants, that's the businesses. Since that summit, 26 new businesses have located downtown, either located or renovated their buildings. You look at downtown, and I always ask this question: how many chains, national chains, restaurants are located downtown St. Cloud? You gotta think about a chain now, a national chain.
Yeah, I think there's 4.
Okay, I count one as a restaurant.
Okay.
So you got to tell me. I count Jimmy John's. Jimmy John's is a chain.
So the first 2 that came to my mind really fast were Jimmy John's and Starbucks.
Starbucks, right? And I Starbucks and Jimmy John's are the 2 that I have, but I put Starbucks in that category of non-restaurant.
Sure.
But
I hedged my bet because I came up with 2 really quickly.
Yeah, those are
and so
good.
I was like,
those are the 2.
Okay.
Because some others are regional.
Yeah.
You look at Bricks and Bourbon, of course, they have a few, but they're not a national corporation. But if you look at Starbucks, they're a coffee shop, but Starbucks also is a national chain, corporate owned.
Yep.
I mean, so they look at market, and they actually only locate where there's a market.
Yep.
So and then if you look at Jimmy John's, there's sandwich places, a college there. I mean, that makes sense. They can be anywhere they deliver. So,
sure.
But if you look at the restaurants, so then I asked, okay, if you look at that, so then opposite of walkable urban is drivable suburban. So that's where you have to have a car to get there. If less than 1% is walkable urban, that means 99% is walkable suburban or drivable suburban.
Sure.
And that's all over the country. So you're not competing with anything there. You're just going to a place. But okay, Maple Grove, one of the best examples of drivable suburban.
Yeah.
Nice area. Love it. I love the restaurants. Name one non-chain in Maple Grove.
I can't think of any of them.
I'm sure there is. I can't think of any either, but they've got a lot of chains.
Yeah.
Fine. You can go to any suburb in the country that has that. And you can,
same little
you can
assortment.
get to any of those things. The thing about our downtown is it's unique as far as the vibe, the restaurants, bars, theaters.
Yeah.
And you have 19th century buildings. There's not a single 19th century building I know in Maple Grove because I remember Maple Grove.
1990s.
Yeah, there might be. Yeah, that'd be the 1990s. But so it creates something that is unique.
Yeah.
So if you have a choice, especially with being able to to be work from home anywhere, you're not focusing the workforce on where you want to get a job. It's where do you want to live.
Yeah.
And if you can live in a place that has all those things, and then you can work anywhere anyway, that's why we're focusing on down. So that's what makes me the most, because to me it takes the history, which I love. It takes that community piece. It allows a community that's becoming more and more diverse to continue to look. But you can have something downtown for everybody. Let's think about restaurants. Think about all the different culturally ethnic restaurants downtown that you wouldn't see anywhere else in this area.
So many.
Yeah. So that to me is really the exciting piece. But it takes a whole bunch of people. It takes the private sector to really make it happen.
Yep.
We're just trying to get the government piece out of the way and embrace some of that structure. So we're trying to get some money from the legislature in fairness and equity.
Yep.
And then focus on downtown piece of it. So
Wonderful. Well, that's really great. All right. So, Mr. Mayor, we just had our London fog, and now I think what I heard is that you love lemongrass tea. Is that true?
I love lemongrass tea. I've discovered.
Thank you, Taylor.
I fortunately have had the good fortune to be able to travel.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah, you've done quite a bit of traveling.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I love.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
I love lemongrass tea, and it's a. I travel a lot, so I discovered lemongrass tea. I think this was somewhere in South Asia, but I like unique things, and prior to that, I really never had a lot of lemongrass tea, so I had a lot there. So, and it was really, it is a tea that's harder to get in a lot of places.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has the traditional. Especially if I'm at a hotel, there's never going to be lemongrass tea in the room.
No.
But I love lemongrass tea, and there's 2 things I discovered tea and in the coffee. Obviously, you probably understand that one of my unique coffees that I had is it's the and this I think might have been in Southeast Asia. I don't know what it really is called, but I called it crappuccino because it's these animals that
Kopi Luwak.
Is that what it's called?
I think it's what it's called.
They defecate this out, and then people go out and they take the heart, and then they take that and they make the coffee beans out of it. I had that, because it was unique, but it was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
It's expensive, but that's what they call this. But lemongrass tea is. But I've traveled to 130 countries around the world.
That's incredible.
And so, and to me, that's again the uniqueness.
Yeah.
I will go to a downtown.
Yep.
And I will absolutely look at the history of a place.
Yeah.
And I will go to places that are unique and that are kind of off the wall, especially history. So that's why I think if St. Cloud has that, then you bring that in. We're working on something downtown. I wish I could announce it, but we're working on something.
You've heard it here first.
We're working on something downtown that will be a draw. It's just a matter of
great.
making it happen. Hopefully, in the next few months, we'll be.
Well, how about this? Maybe in 6 months or something, you could come back and
Sure,
tell us about how exciting it is.
Yeah, that'll be. There's something that might be a nice attraction down there.
Mr. Mayor, 130 countries is incredible. I also love to travel a lot. I think I have been to like maybe 40 countries, which
That's a lot.
Which is a lot.
That is a lot.
And we're not even playing the same game here. 130 is incredible. How many of those are military? How many of those are something relating to your work? And what percentage of that is just like you enjoy traveling and so you go for your free time and vacation?
Yeah, for work, none.
Okay.
Because
Not even Germany?
No. When I go to Germany, I've been to Germany so many times.
Okay.
I've been to Germany probably more. I would say probably Germany more than any country other than the United States. Because I've got, I've hosted German exchange students.
Yeah.
We got a partnership over there, so I go there every year.
Yeah.
But I would say, and when I do travel, I pay my own way. That's why I always say for work. I go.
Right.
Now, I say that I should probably do a caveat. When I travel, even when I'm traveling for my own, I learn things.
Oh, yeah.
So from the city's perspective, I would say, but the city's not paying for it.
Yeah.
But I take pictures of something that looks like some cool art or something cool that they're doing that I think, we should do this here.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of that. But I first 18 years of my life didn't go anywhere.
Yep.
The Mount Rushmore maybe or whatever, not hardly anywhere. And then boom, I'm in Japan.
Yeah.
That really gave me, and prior to that, my senior year of high school, I did go to Germany. That's the very first country I've ever been to.
Your first love.
It was Germany. I was on a Lufthansa flight. I raised a bunch of money in the German club. I was in German club, so we made.
I also was in German club.
Oh, well, see, especially the Leipzig.
Ein bisschen.
Ja, ich spreche ein bisschen auch. Ich verstehe besser. But I was in German club, and so I raised all this money. We did donkey basketball. I don't even know if you can do that anymore, but we did it. So we made gingerbread house. Anyway, I raised enough money to go to Germany my senior year with the German club. And that was my first flight. First time I've ever been on an airplane.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
That's
and then
incredible.
Japan, and it's somewhat ironic to me because I'm thinking, these are the first two countries I've been to in World War II.
World War II.
The two.
For a history buff.
Yeah, it is. And I thought, wow, Germany and Japan. But I really got a love for travel.
Yeah.
And then while I was in the Air Force, I did, I went to a few places, and while I was in the reserves, I took hops to places that I could go to.
Yep.
And then, because I couldn't certainly afford any of that in college, and then after, and then I just started going to places. Europe's always great because you can go all over Europe.
Yep.
And then. And especially
with a Eurail pass, you can see a whole bunch of it real fast.
You can hit tons of them right there. And then once you get to a number, and you're probably at that point, once you get to a number where you start to count, you don't start to count until you're about 30 or 25. And then and then I got a map in my basement that shows all this. So then you then you got a goal. All right, I want to go to 50. And then I start to get to 50. I'm at 75. And then I got to get to 100.
Right.
So and then, my next goal after 100 was, all right, the Queen, when the Queen passed away, I discovered this reading it somewhere that she's been during her reign, which was the longest reigning monarch.
In the history of the world?
Yeah, she was at 128 countries. I go, I got to reach that level of the Queen.
Oh, that's so
I made 128, and then I just put on a couple this year, and so now I'm at 130. So now my goal is 150. Now I know I'm not going to get to every country in the world. I'm not going to North Korea anytime soon.
for sure.
I'm not going to Syria. I'm not going to, You know, I fortunately have been to Ukraine and I've been to Russia and I fortunately been to places that before, you know, I've been to the Gaza area, I've been to Israel, I've been to Egypt. I really want to get to, you know, Iraq. Iran's not going to go anytime soon, but I really want to go to Iraq and Iran. That's where there's history, which I'd love to be able to see and go to, but I, you know, slowly keep building. I still haven't been to Antarctica, so I haven't been to all the continents yet. Yeah. But that will require retirement because it takes it's a big trip. I go 4, 5, 6 days, maybe a week, 10 days, because I can't, you know, really leave what I do, and so I go for short trips. Yeah. I don't call them vacations because I'm still. Like I said, I still take calls and do that because you can't leave the position, but you can get away, which is good to do. But I've become really passionate about travel, and it's really because of history. I mean, I love the history of these places. You know, how many years ago wouldn't have been that long? It would have been prior to the 1989 when when the wall fell and all those things. You know, I was in Czechoslovakia then, but then it no longer was a country. But I was fortunately in both the Czech Republic and Slovakia before then. Yep. And I was in Yugoslavia. But and now so then I had to go.
Do you count them both?
Yeah, I've been to both. Yeah. And I was in the West Germany, but I never made it to East Germany until they unified. Yeah. So I was there, but I've been to some countries that Yugoslavia. But now I've been to all of the former, what used to be Yugoslavia, all of those countries. Oh, great. And there's some beautiful places to go.
Unbelievable part of the world.
I tell you, there's some places that a lot of tourists don't go and will never go to that are some of the coolest places to go that people would be, and surprised how easy it is to get to.
And how welcome you are.
Oh, yeah. I was in Bangladesh recently. That's another one I added. Now, the State Department wouldn't tell you it's in the top places to go. But I watched some videos, some bloggers that talk about how, in fact, I watched this woman do this vlog. She goes, people are just so friendly and welcoming. They want to take selfies with you everywhere. And I thought, yeah, that's right. That was her experience. So I went there.
Same.
As soon as I got in the taxi, the guy wanted to take a selfie with me. I was walking down the street. Everybody stares at you because you're unique. They don't get a lot of tourists, especially Western tourists. They get, so it's predominantly people that are from Bangladesh or India.
China, maybe?
India, China. You get folks that it's one of the largest Muslim countries in the world, so they do get people that from other countries that visit there easy, and it's a visa on entry, which you sometimes take a risk at. But I figure I'm going to be there. The State Department recommended getting one ahead of time, but I'm also frugal. That was $160. If I actually went there, I think I paid $50. Yeah. So I got a deal, and what are they going to do? Get me back on a plane? Would they rather have me come in and spend some money? So I did, and but it was really cool. And then I learned a lot about the history, and and that used to be part of Pakistan. So if I would have got there earlier, when it was Pakistan, I would have been to Pakistan. Now I actually have to go to Pakistan because I've only been to Bangladesh, which is no longer part of that. So I love the history. So at some point I need to get to Ethiopia, and I've been trying to do that because that's really where the oldest Lucy the skull was found, and that's the oldest human remain found anywhere. Yep. So and that really is where there's the cradle of a lot of things. So we can come back and just do a whole podcast on travel sometime.
That's great.
But travel is something I really enjoy.
What's so on the bucket list? Like which country is still at the top?
Well, I have a trip scheduled that's always been on my bucket list, and I had it scheduled in 2020 to go. And
what happened in 2020?
COVID. Yeah, there's that little thing, that little virus, and this is an island, so it makes it tougher. Now, this isn't a country, but it's an island, so it's because it's part of Chile. And
Easter Island?
Easter Island.
Are you going to Easter Island?
I'm going to Easter Island because I've always wanted to go to Easter Island because I want to see those heads. The heads. So they're not heads; they're statues. I didn't. Their statues actually buried in the ground. But I want to see that before it's gone or before And so Easter Island is, and it's very remote. It's one of the most remote places. I mean, it's a 6-hour flight from Santiago, Chile. Yeah. So you have to get there. And what made it easier than it was in 2020. Was Delta now has a partnership with LAN Airlines, so you now have. I mean, I had it all booked, and of course, I had a few trips that year that I was able to redo.
Mm-hmm.
This one took the longest to redo. So yeah, I'll be going later this year. I try to go off season. You know, I look at travel. I don't want to, a lot of tourists there, but I'm going to Easter Island. It's not going to be like snowing.
No,
it is. But there is an off season, and Easter Island is just beautiful according to what I've seen. And so yeah, and it's it's part of Chile, but it's
and a tragic story of the people of Easter Island. And
oh yeah, it is so remote that it is I've in the last year and a half I've been kind of on an island quest. So I'm going to island countries, and I just got back from not that long ago. I was in the when I went to Bangladesh, I just went down from Bangladesh. I flew into Thailand and then took a boat to the Andaman Islands. The Andaman Islands. There's an island there that you can't go to. It's the Sinamul tribe. I don't know if you've heard of the tribe. That's the tribe that they're isolated.
Yep.
And Andaman Islands are part of India, but there's this group of islands. Now there is a group of those islands you can go to.
Yep.
But you can't go to the one that has a similar tribe on because they'll kill you.
Yeah.
In fact, but the Indian government protects them. You can't get within 5 miles of the island. I think that recently is maybe it might have even been 2018 or 19, a missionary, a 25-year-old missionary snuck onto the island and was killed.
Yeah.
And so this is a tribe that's been around for 4,000 or 5,000 years, and they don't take to any visitors at all. And so it's a fascinating. I've seen documentaries years ago about this, but so you couldn't go there. But the other islands you can go to, and if you go farther down, then there's a group of islands in that area. So I try to, when it comes to islands, I try to go to places that are just unique. Yeah. I don't know if you've heard of James Bond Island.
Is it from the movie?
It's from the movie. It's one of the James Bond movies. It's in Thailand. It's not too far off of the coast.
Yep.
And they call it James Bond Island now. It actually has a Thai name, but
and it's the one with like the big rundown structure on it, right?
It has a big rock that kind of floats off to the side. It's really cool. You would recognize it.
The one I'm thinking of is in Japan, I think.
Yeah, and there's a lot of islands that are used in movies. There's a couple of islands near James. There's another island that's near James Bond Island. It's from the Blue Lagoon. What's his name? I can't remember the actor right now. The movie The Beach. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, sure.
Okay, that was kind of snuck onto it. But it was filmed there. So a lot of these places are just filmed somewhere. So it's kind of cool just going to them because of that piece of history. So if there's something unique, I like to go to those places. Cool. So islands or island countries are kind of my goal. Like I said, I could talk. Seychelles, I was in not that long ago either, and that's. A lot of people have never heard of Seychelles. Yeah. I love to go to a place where I say I've been to Seychelles, and somebody goes, I don't know where that is. And that's the smallest country in Africa. Yeah. That it's off in the Indian Ocean, not too far up from Mauritius and Madagascar, but probably more west of the Maldives. Yep. But beautiful area, cool country. In all the islands I've been in the whole world, the most beautiful island. It almost looks like a movie set. Oh, that's cool. The rocks look like they're fake, but they're granite, and the beaches are crystal clear, and so. But anyway, so every time I talk about it, I gotta get another trip. But I've got one already getting down Easter Island. Antarctica is the one I need to get to at some point.
Mr. Mayor, have you been to Santiago, Chile before?
I've been to Santiago, Chile. Yes, I've been to Chile.
Have you had a completo? Which is the hot dog.
I haven't had a completo. I've had a, what's the drink that's a lemon, what's it called? I lose its name, but I can't remember. I haven't had that, completo.
This year, when you are in Santiago, you can get them everywhere. It's kind of like, maybe like a piece of pizza in New York City. It's such a staple. They kind of got them everywhere, but it's a big hot dog that has like ketchup and mayo and guacamole. Like it's covered. It's just this big smothered hot dog. And it's called a completo because once you start it, you have to finish. There's kind of this like lore around it about your ability. Like once you start it, you have to complete it. Otherwise, some disparaging things are thought of you. Oh. And so, which is why the name of the hot dog is complete, because you have to complete it.
Well, I will definitely do that. Everything you just announced as the ingredients are something that I would
there you go.
I would eat. The last time when I was in Santiago, I did not Did not eat that.
Yeah.
I think it might have been because I think Santiago was an area where I was at during protests.
Oh.
So I experienced folks being tear gassed.
Yeah, a much different kind of.
Yeah, I just kind of sit back and walk, back in the area. But that was my experience in Santiago. It was more as a tourist during a. It's always a challenge going to countries when they have an election or they have some type of labor protest.
Yep.
It's just a little bit more dangerous, but really also something unique because they don't want to drive out tourists, especially Chile.
No. I was in Ukraine shortly after the Orange Revolution. And so talking with young people about, like, in that big square in Kyiv, and, just there were all these young people who had, like, kind of been a part of that. It was the first successful non-violent seceding from Russia. I don't know. It was just fascinating to be there shortly after that and to kind of experience some of the kind of felt like wind in the sails.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Yeah, you're fortunate too. And I said I've been to there also to before. I mean, in fact, that was one of those things you talk about food. I had to what would be the food of Kyiv. From selling it to Westerners coming in.
Bread.
Chicken Kiev.
Oh yeah, okay.
Which almost every restaurant sold. So and I must have took 4 or 5 pictures every time I was in when I said chicken. And I'm actually in Kiev, and I didn't know the pronunciation. I didn't learn the Kiev was the way I've always pronounced it my entire life, and then all of a sudden, when war broke out, you get a little different pronunciation.
Yeah.
So that's probably the right one. I just haven't been pronouncing it. Right. But you're right, the history there, and then they've got that memorial for all the soldiers in that
incredible.
Square.
It's really incredible.
It's a beautiful country, and just the history and. So if you were there, did you get any fur in that area? Did you get to Belarus at all?
I didn't get to Belarus. So in that area, I guess on one of the trips that I've been to Ukraine a couple of times. On one of the trips, we did some East Germany, which again is still Germany, but has a vibe.
It's different.
Yep.
Yeah, you go to New Brandenburg, or if you
we were
go
in
to
Leipzig.
Schwerin or some of those places, those are very different.
Yeah. Dresden is one of my very favorite European cities.
Yeah, it's a very cool city. Yeah. Absolutely
beautiful. The Frauenkirche, the church that was firebombed.
Yeah.
When I was in college, we sang a piece that was commissioned. It's a piece written about that church and the firebombing, and we got to premiere that piece, a beautiful choral work, and we got to premiere it in the Frauenkirche.
Oh wow!
It was really, really, really special. Just that city.
That would be cool. Yeah, the history of that's in so you're far enough east. You get into the Czech Republic, into Prague.
On a different trip. In Czech Republic.
To me, that's one of the most beautiful. And I was there years ago when it was inexpensive to be in Prague.
And now it is not.
They became, it is not now. Now, if you want to go to something similar,
that
has a lot of history, that's really inexpensive, like Prague was, go to Georgia.
Budapest. Oh, okay.
Georgia.
All right.
Georgia's not a lot of tourists go to Georgia, but it has got some of the best food.
Yeah.
And it's where wine between Georgia. I mean, they say in Georgia that they invented wine.
Right.
It is wine, food, and just a beautiful area. Really, and I always tell people, especially with what's happening in Russia and Putin, get to Georgia because they already control part of Georgia, but they're also the Georgians are with Ukraine, but it's sad what's happening there now because it takes away all of some of the most beautiful areas with all that history that's just being destroyed. Especially in Ukraine, and Belarus obviously is on that side. I wouldn't go to Belarus now, and I wouldn't go to Russia now, but it's sad to see that destroyed in such history and such a great because the people are amazing in those places. So
a really resilient, hardy people.
Yeah,
they've walked through so much. Not even just recently, but as a people for a really long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so our last little course here for our flight. Normally, these are all coffee, coffee kind of related or themed. This because of your enjoyment of tea. They've been tea, but this is just a latte, a blended latte. So it does have a little, it's got a little bit of coffee in it. Sip it if you would like.
But no, I can still drink coffee. It's just not as much as I used to. So this is a treat. And it's
just
cold.
a chocolate blended latte, and it's kind of like dessert, right? So for our final course.
Perfect.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
That's really good. That's like a chocolate coffee malt. That's really good.
The espresso that's in that is from El Salvador.
Oh, is that really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Kind of a little bit almond, a little bit almond flavor, a little spicy.
Oh, that's really good.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah,
okay,
very good.
So I have a fun little game here for you.
All right.
I have a friend named Brad. Brad grew up in central Minnesota, just like I did.
All right.
And he and I play this little game when we're driving around together, where you drive past a spot and you point to a current business, and then you say something like, "What was that business 3 businesses ago?" And it's just like, how many points can you get? So as we're driving around, we're just kind of trying to test each other's knowledge.
That's a good game. I mean, that's kind of Minnesotan to begin with. Almost every time you used to, in the old days when you didn't have GPS, somebody would always give you direction. You take a right where that such and such used to be.
That's exactly right. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 of these, and I just want to see how many of them you can get. So I'm just going to give you a year and what the business currently is, and you just tell me what was in that spot.
Okay.
All right. We're going to start easy. Okay. In 1950, what was at the Byerly's location?
Oh, 1950? That would have been Rock Stadium.
That's
would
right.
Have been in that area. Yeah. Right near the Kleis Motel, by the way.
That's right.
Add a little bit to get a bonus on that one.
And a cousin? That was
that was a distant cousin that started the Kleis Motel and the Dairy Queen at that time. But yeah, it was the Rock Stadium.
Yeah. All right. In 2002, the Panda Express over by the mall, what stood there?
In 2002.
It was a different building.
That was there was like oh God, I got to think, because there were some gas stations in that area and there's some automotive things. I don't know if that went.
It was a restaurant.
Oh, there was a restaurant. 2002. Now this is really bad because, of course, it's not that old. Older history I'm better at.
For sure.
2002. Well, it wasn't a TGIF, was it? Is Red Robin is in that close area.
It was a Schlotsky's Deli.
Oh, yes.
One of my favorites. One of my favorite sandwiches in town.
And that, you're when we start getting into sandwiches.
Okay.
It's just not me.
Got it. All right.
Not a sandwich guy.
Here's the deal. I think maybe.
I'm not going to say any names right now because I'd be dishing some sandwich places, but I'm not a sandwich guy.
Okay, got it. In 1995, what was at the River's Edge Convention Center?
In 1995?
Yeah.
Well, in 1986, the Civic Center was next to it. So if you're actually looking at what was by the Civic Center, the Civic Center was built in 1986, you had the St. Cloud Library, and then you had the M&H appliance store that was there for all those years. So, and then that goes even farther back before that. So, yeah, I would say the library, because the library we built since I've been mayor. So, library.
And I just picked random years that I knew the library was there.
Yeah, library and M&H appliance, which eventually moved somewhere else because I bought. It's kind of odd in the heart of your downtown, next to your Civic Center. You got refrigerators and washing machines. So.
True Stone Financial on Division. I think that's 33rd and Division.
33rd and Division. Oh yeah, sure.
In the year 2000?
Okay, so I got to think. It was Hooters. It was a White Castle. It was a.
And then the one
Perkins. It was
not Perkins.
It was it wasn't McMillan's because that was
across the street.
Was it an Embers?
It was an Embers.
Yeah, it was
very
Embers,
good.
Yeah. Well, because the McMillan's was. It was those types of places.
Yep.
I couldn't probably tell you the difference back
then. But you got it. Quinn Livingston Hughes. What was Quinn Livingston Hughes before
it? Was a bowling alley.
It was a bowling alley.
That was where St. Cloud. That's where I was a legislator. They were playing poker and they arrested this old lady for playing Texas Hold'em. So I introduced some legislation to make Texas Hold'em legal.
Okay.
At that bowling alley at that location. Yep.
Neat. All right. Tumble Fresh. What was the last thing
Tumble Fresh. Where's Tumble Fresh?
Tumble Fresh is not far from here on Division.
Oh, that's where I do laundry at home, so laundromats are a little. But now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, where the for all those years they had the Wendy's there, and the Wendy's was there for In fact, I think that's the first Wendy's I ever been to at that corner. Yeah.
Yep. All right, and then the last one, 1998, the Jimmy John's downtown. It lived, I think, a long time as this.
Oh, 1998. There was before Jimmy John's, there was a coffee shop there for a number of years prior to that.
For a long time.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what coffee shop that was. You're going to tell me, but I know it was a coffee shop. I get like half.
You get a half a point. You easily get a half a point. Called the Meeting Grounds.
Meeting Grounds, yes. The Meeting Grounds.
That was kind of my first coffee shop. I was in high school.
And
I loved it.
And I didn't drink a lot of coffee back then, so I still don't now. But I do remember the Meeting Grounds. I remember meeting there many times.
Yeah.
But what it was called, to me, it was always the place by the. That name changed all the years from the Lecho to the Radisson. It used to be the Radisson there, so it was always the place that was oddly connected to it.
Oddly connected to the Radisson.
Yeah. So.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think you did a really good job.
All right,
nearly a clean sweep. Well done with that little game. And now, you can
see the history is also personal to me. So if I haven't been to those places, I don't know what's there now. So, but if I, that's why, the White Castle and the, I thought because eventually Hooters. That was the first person. That was so controversial in St. Cloud. We got a Hooters, right on Division. Mm-hmm. And then White Castle, which, so a lot of those.
The White Castle didn't last long. I wonder.
No, it did not last long. And some things, that everybody want, and they come here like
the donut place.
If you look at Krispy Kreme, Wade Park, it was in Wade Park.
Riot.
But the line there was, and all of a sudden, boom, it didn't last and didn't do very well. So. Yeah. But now we get Dunkin' Donuts, and I think those donuts are, I don't know, I haven't been there.
Yeah.
So I've become less of a donut fan. So.
Right. I am as much of a donut fan as I've ever been. I just eat them less, but still a big fan.
Oh, yeah, I'm still a fan. You're right. That's the thing. If they're available somewhere where I can.
That's right. Okay, Mr. Manager, I have two, kind of as we finish here, two last questions. The first one is, do you have some fun little gem, someplace that you just love in St. Cloud? It could be a restaurant. It could be a fun little place that you like to go. It could be a park or something, but just something that you think, man, this is one of St. Cloud's little gems.
It's the Blue Goose, the Speakeasy downtown.
Yeah, fun.
That's one of the coolest places I think in town because it also has the history.
Yeah, of course.
You bring Prohibition into it. I think Ray Harrington does their food is amazing there, and it's unique to get in. It's a unique place. They've got great cocktails. They got great staff.
Yeah.
It's cool. That's my little place. If I was taking someone for some little thing, that's kind of it. Otherwise, parks. I'm just a huge fan of pretty much all the parks, but I love the trail system, and then I like to get off the trail along where the Beaver Island Trail is and take those. They're biker trails, but I just walk those or go into the Talahi Woods, which is just the woods, and go down by the Mississippi down in that area. Those are kind of the cool places. Getaway, that's where I would go to. Little Speakeasy is just it's cool. So those would be the places.
Wonderful. I would say my little gem. I would say downtown, since we kind of spent quite a bit of time talking about downtown. I love the restaurant Arroy.
Oh, yeah.
I love Southeast Asian cuisine. I love just some of the really unique dishes. If you're curious about going and trying it, I would recommend Sig Sig, dish called Sig Sig.
I love Filipino food and I love Thai food, so that's the combination of the two. So I'm a big fan of pretty much any type of Asian food that's not too spicy. Thai food sometimes can be spicy, but I can always ask for the zero.
In central Minnesota, they usually do a pretty good job of.
I always say, how spicy is it? And usually somebody that's waiting on me will say, do you think ketchup's spicy? And I go, no. Okay, give me the ketchup level, and I'll take that. But.
All right. And so, Mr. Mayor, my last question today is it's about an unpaid advertisement. Is there something that you think deserves an unpaid ad?
Well, I think it would be, we talked before, travel to me is that. I think some people wait until they say, I'm going to travel when I retire. And, retirement, two things. I decided a long time ago that I don't know what my physical ability will be at that point. And I love to hike. I love to explore, and I love to travel. And when I travel, there's one thing I do. It's a little harder to do now, but I always I land someplace, I go to the gift shop, I look at their postcard rack. And I make sure I go to all the places that they think I should go to. And then so I've got that in case somebody asks me, have you been there and there and there? Because that's usually from the postcards.
That's right.
Which but the thing is, then I go and just explore. I walk all over St. Cloud. I just love to walk and go to places that are off the beaten trail. Yeah. You'd be amazed at what you find. Little historical markers, little restaurants, coffee shops or something that just aren't really in the main piece. Away from that, you find some really cool things, and so I get a chance to talk to people and that are strangers. So yeah, I would just say travel. Do it when you can. It's not as expensive as people think. You can make it way too expensive than it needs to be. I've traveled to some most remote countries in less than I would pay if I was traveling to Minneapolis and staying there for a weekend, or if I was traveling to New York or Miami or LA. You can go to some places and spend some really quality time and see something that very few people ever see. So to me, explore the travel. You see things, you meet great people, and you've got a lifetime of memories. To me, I believe experience is the greatest thing you can achieve than things. Yeah. So the more experience you get, then to me, that's travel.
Wonderful. Well, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it so much. Thanks for everything that you're doing for our community. It was fun to hear about what's happening downtown. I'm excited to see what's coming over the course of the next weeks, months, and years. And looking forward to maybe sometime we could have you back on once a little bit more of this is unfolded and you can continue to tell us about the great stuff that's happening in our community. Absolutely. Anytime. I always happy to especially do a podcast. I oftentimes get accused, somebody will ask me a question and I'll answer it. I usually give a pretty long answer and they'll go, I didn't ask for a podcast. I just wanted a yes or no. So, this is a great setting for me just to be able to chat. So thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.